To understand the world we live in today, we must first look back at how it was divided not so long ago. What you are looking at here is the geopolitical landscape that defined the second half of the 20th century. This map illustrates the stark division of the Cold War. To the east, shaded in red, we see the dominance of the Soviet Union and its satellite states, including Poland, Czechoslovakia, and East Germany. To the west, in blue, lie the NATO allies and neutral nations like France, the United Kingdom, and West Germany. Running through the heart of the continent is the Iron Curtain. This wasn't just a border, it was an ideological and physical barrier that separated two distinct worldviews. For decades, global geopolitics was frozen in this bipolar structure, a constant standoff between two superpowers. But as we move to the next slide, we will see how the collapse of this map birthed the complex, multipolar world we navigate today. The tectonic plates of history shifted in 1991. The fall of the Soviet Union marked the end of that two-superpower system we just looked at. We moved from a world of binary choices into a new era. We saw the emergence of significant regional powers that began reshaping international relations. China, the European Union, and India rose to become major players on the global stage. But this shift wasn't just about who held power, it was about the nature of conflict itself. Modern warfare changed. We moved away from traditional state versus state warfare, armies meeting on a battlefield, towards something far more complex. Today, security is challenged by internal ethnic and religious wars, terrorism, and non-state actors who do not respect conventional notions of sovereignty. In this fragmented world, how do we govern? We turn to the United Nations. Founded in 1945 after the devastation of World War II, the UN was designed as the global forum for maintaining peace and security. Its structure is vast, with the General Assembly providing all 193 member states equal voting rights to address international challenges. Ideally, this is where the world comes to talk. However, we must be realistic about its limitations. Despite its noble mission, the UN faces significant constraints. It has no standing military force of its own and relies entirely on voluntary contributions from member nations. Perhaps most critically, the organization often faces paralysis when the permanent members of the Security Council exercise their veto power, stalling action exactly when it is needed most. Alongside political governance, we have the financial architecture that underpins the global economy, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. These institutions play distinct roles. The IMF stabilizes global currencies and acts as a lender of last resort for nations facing bankruptcy. The World Bank, on the other hand, focuses on financing development projects, building infrastructure, schools, and essential services in developing nations. Yet, they are not without controversy. Both institutions face substantial criticism. They are often accused of imposing austerity measures that disproportionately impact vulnerable populations. This raises a fundamental ethical question for the modern era. Does short-term financial stability come at the cost of long-term social welfare and economic equality? Let's look at the map again, but this time through the lens of military alliance. This is NATO in the 21st century. Originally established to counter the Soviet threat, NATO has had to transform its mission completely. Today, it addresses security challenges that didn't exist in 1945, including counterterrorism operations and cyber defense capabilities. It is also focused on deterring renewed Russian aggression in Eastern Europe. A key pillar of NATO is Article 5, the principle that an attack on one member is an attack on all. Interestingly, this has been invoked only once in history, following the September 11th attacks in 2001. This demonstrated that the alliance is committed to collective defense far beyond its traditional European borders. If you look at the map markers, you can see the friction points. from disputes between Turkey and Greece to the ongoing war in Ukraine. The map has changed, but the dangers remain. As the Cold War froze, other fires began to burn. The 1990s witnessed devastating ethnic conflicts. We saw the breakup of Yugoslavia, leading to ethnic cleansing in Bosnia and Kosovo. We witnessed the horror of Rwanda's 1994 genocide, where 800,000 Tutsis were murdered in just 100 days, a tragic example of the international community's failure to prevent mass atrocities. Then came the shift in 2001. The September 11th al-Qaeda attacks fundamentally shifted global security paradigms. The focus moved toward combating non-state terrorist actors. This resulted in protracted military interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq, wars that redefined modern international relations and the very concept of warfare. Moving into the last decade, we saw the power of the people and the chaos that can follow. Beginning in Tunisia in 2010, pro-democracy uprisings known as the Arab Spring swept across the Middle East and North Africa. For the first time, social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook played a central role, enabling unprecedented grassroots organization. However, the outcomes were mixed, ranging from limited reforms to devastating civil wars. Nowhere was this more tragic than in Syria. The Syrian civil war became a multifaceted conflict involving the Assad regime, rebel factions, ISIS, and Kurdish forces. It became a proxy battleground for global powers, generating millions of refugees who fled to Turkey and Europe, severely testing international humanitarian systems and European Union cohesion. We often think the threat of nuclear war belongs to the past. This graphic proves otherwise. Two major issues dominate this landscape. First, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea and the 2022 full-scale invasion represent the largest European land war since 1945. This has raised fundamental questions about territorial sovereignty and international law. Second, nuclear proliferation remains an existential threat. As you can see on the chart, Russia possesses 6,000 warheads, followed closely by the USA with 5,500. But look at the others: China, France, the UK, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea. The danger of rogue states like North Korea developing atomic weapons, or the specter of nuclear materials falling into terrorist hands, underscores the fragility of the Non-Proliferation Treaty regime. Warfare is no longer just about soldiers and tanks. It is about code and climate. The digital battlefield has emerged as a critical frontier. State-sponsored actors from Russia, China, North Korea, and the United States conduct sophisticated operations. They target power grids, electoral systems, and classified information. These conflicts are complicated by the difficulty of attribution. It is hard to hold someone accountable when you can't prove who typed the code. Simultaneously, we face the threat of nature itself. Climate change functions as a threat multiplier. It drives resource scarcity, conflicts over water supplies, and creates climate refugees through rising seas and drought. Environmental degradation transcends national borders, straining international frameworks like the Paris Agreement. Finally, we must ask, what is the future of global cooperation? We are seeing rising nationalist movements championing isolationism, often described as America First style politics, across multiple continents. These movements challenge the post-1945 international order. They raise critical questions. Can multilateral organizations survive without robust support from major powers? Recent crises, such as pandemics and accelerating climate change, demonstrate that national borders are porous against transnational threats. There is a fundamental tension today between the desire for sovereignty and the imperative for coordinated international responses. As we look to the future, This tension will define our century. Thank you for listening.